Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to part 2 of mine and Abby's Q&A for this week, right?
Yay! Part 2, Q&A,
So fun.
more Q&As.
More Q&As. We love doing this with you guys. We love getting questions and we love being able to encourage you in this way. And just see where your hearts are, see how we can, we're here to serve you.
Yes, and we hope our greatest hope is that in every answer, every A to your Q, we're pointing you back to the Lord and pointing you back to His Word.
Yes.
That's our heart for the whole thing, is to say, my homeschool looks different, but we're going to point you to the orchestrator of it all.
That's right. I want to jump into this next question, but really quickly, because you asked me this on the last podcast. You asked for kind of an update on what was going on with our family and with the movie. And you and your family have something really exciting going on that you just announced recently.
Yes.
Tell us really quickly about what you guys have going.
Okay, really quickly. My husband and I just started, the Lord put this on our heart, years ago. It's been in the making for years. But we just took the giant leap of faith and we started a nonprofit organization, a 501c3 called Called Beyond. And Jesse and I have a website called Called to the Top, and that's where we do a lot of our writing and a lot of stuff there. So Called Beyond is the nonprofit arm of that. And what we do is we work to take out families, kids with disabilities or terminal illnesses or just other challenges, and their whole family. So the whole purpose of this nonprofit is to really show the value of life, because in 2020, many people would view these children as throwaway kids. And we know that God creates every life on purpose, and there are no mistakes in the kingdom of God. And so we just really want to show the value of life. We want to show the blessing of family and bless these families in return. And then also the big picture is to show the Creator and the hand of God through His creation. So we take families out, the whole family, not just the child, on hunting, fishing, whitewater rafting, all sorts of outdoor adventures, things that these families otherwise could not do, to give them a bit of a reprieve, to take them out into creation and show them the Creator, and to share their stories with the world. So if you want to know more about that, you can go to thecallbeyond.org, and I think we'll link it on here. Or you can go to calledtothetop.com, which is our website, and you'll find a link to thecallbeyond.org. So anyway, we're really excited about it.
Yes, it's very exciting.
Yeah, and we get to do it as a whole family because we are an outdoor family all together.
Yeah.
Our kids are very actively involved. So this is something that God has just orchestrated and brought all the pieces together. And
yeah. So cool.
That's what we're doing.
So basically, your outdoorsy family wants to take other outdoorsy families who may have a child or who do have a child who has some type of a disability
or terminal illness or just
right.
really any challenge out of the ordinary that that we can bless them. So that's what we do.
Yeah. So cool. That's so exciting. I love
exciting.
just seeing God's hand at work in your family and just
you.
your heart to be able to serve and minister to other families with the passions that God has given you to be able to do those things.
So
it's
listeners,
so much fun.
if you know of families that would be blessed by this or people that would want to volunteer and get on board, all that's on the website, but it's going to take a lot more than just us to further this. So
yes. What is there a cost involved, like per family or?
Yeah. So it depends. Well, that thanks for asking that. This is not free. The families do not pay. That is part of the nonprofit, is we raise the funds to be able to bless the families in this way. So in that, we do need the funds to do this. So if you have on your heart that you would like to give to a family to be able to do these things, because the heart behind it is this doesn't cost the family anything. We do this all for them, and it's a blessing for them, and then their story is shared. So
cool.
These families go through a lot. They have enough going on. Mm-hmm. They carry a big burden, a big load. Yeah. And so we just want to come alongside them. So if you feel led to, give to blessing a family, head on over to the website.
That's awesome. Or if you're a family who needs to be blessed, head on over to the website.
Absolutely. Or if you want to be involved as the hands and the feet, you know?
Yep. God will provide. So anyway,
absolutely.
So cool. Very, very excited about that.
Thank you.
All right. So let's jump into our next question. And this one says, how do I homeschool my son, age 11, who's uncooperative? He fights me on everything, and I'm feeling so defeated and overwhelmed. You want to jump on this?
Yes. I read this and immediately two things came to my mind. Age 11, I feel like everything changes. I feel like at that 11-year-old age, there is a shift. And you know what? I thought that, and then I found, I'm going to give you some resources. I found this amazing book. I don't know if you're listening. I'm going to tell you. It's called No Longer Little, Parenting Tweens with Grace and Hope. And it's by Hal and Melanie Young. And this book really gave me insight. It's not just boys. It's also girls. There's a lot going on in an 11-year-old, a lot going on. And you're not alone, Mama, who says this. I think that this is a common thing. So I would suggest get this book. It really helps navigate through some of those tumultuous years and the confusion that they're feeling. And often that comes out in what you said is uncooperative. They fight you on everything. That is just kind of a result of where they're at. And it gives you a lot of good tips and pointers. The other one is this book called Mother and Son. I would suggest. It's called The Respect Effect. And it talks about how around that age 11, you know, you've babied your son. He's been your baby. I have a son, and it's the same way. They're your little baby, and you hold them and you snuggle them, and they do whatever mama says because you're mama. And then they hit this certain age where they're starting to become men. And in their nature, they don't want to be told what to do by you. Yep. And so there is this new dance that you're going to have to dance on being his authority and his teacher, but at the same time understanding that he's coming into a manhood and he is naturally learning to assert himself in a new way. And your relationship with your son, which is very unlike daughters, it's not like that with daughters. It's very different with sons. Your relationship very much shifts at that season. So both of those books are going to give you, and I could say it on here, but they've said it much better. That's why they wrote books on it, on how to deal with sons at age 11 who seem uncooperative and seem like they're fighting you on everything. And that you are, it says, feeling defeated and overwhelmed. So we want you to know that we're praying for you. You're not alone. Yeah. This is normal, but there are answers out there. So it's just going to be a shift with a son to understand how you're going to relate to him differently in this season and moving forward.
Yeah, I am so glad you could answer that because I have a family of all girls. I come from a family of girls. I only have daughters and 5 nieces. And so it's hard for me to even wrap my mind around what it's like to homeschool a son. You know, because they really are. God made them male and female. They're very different.
Did. But I would say, too, for those with daughters, this one, the No Longer Little book, it talks about daughters, too, because they go through a shift at 11, too.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Do they
Hormones,
go through a shift?
Oh, goodness.
Yep. So, you know, it's not just sons, but there is something different about sons. So I cannot recommend that book enough.
Yes. Okay, we will link to that in the show notes as well. And thank you for that. So let's take a quick break and we'll be back in a minute. Did you miss the 2020 Homegrown Generation Family Expo? If so, you can now have full access to the entire expo for just $10. You'll enjoy practical homeschooling encouragement, advice, and resources from many of your favorite homeschool leaders, including Kurt Cameron, Heidi St. John, Andrew Pudawa, Rachel Carmen, Dorinda Wilson, and many more. Here are just a few of the testimonials from those who have enjoyed this online conference. Rachel said, "Best homeschool conference I have ever attended, filled my soul and definitely God-driven." Katie said, "This was absolutely amazing. I've been so encouraged and blessed. The one thing that stood out to me about each session is that every single one pointed us back to Jesus, back to Him who is faithful." And another homeschool mom said, "Thank you so much for all the value provided at this price. We are a big family with a super tight budget. My husband was encouraged, the boys listened in too. A relief to find this resource at such an affordable price with so much value. Register today for lifetime access to the entire conference for only $10 at homegrowngeneration.com. That's homegrowngeneration.com. We are back. And this next question, all right, it's going to get a little hot in here. Here we go. But we're going to answer it because this is what's being asked.
Yes.
This mom asks, what is the best age to start talking with my kids about sex? We do our best to protect them from inappropriate things they may see on TV, movies, etc. But my 9-year-old keeps asking about how babies are made, and I'm not sure how much to tell her. Ooh. I love that question because
it's a great question. So should we just say if you have kids in the room listening, they could exit?
Yeah, maybe.
We're not going to say anything. But that you're not going to say.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we're talking about sex.
Right. So I have been through this with both of my girls.
Yes.
And I love this question because it's literally how it happened with both of them, where they just, and especially, I don't know if it's the same with boys. Again, Aby, you can maybe talk on that a little bit
Okay.
better than I can. But
Okay.
with my girls, both of my girls are very girly. Both have very strong motherly instincts. They're both nurturers. They love playing with baby dolls. They love babies. And so I want to say with my oldest, she was probably 7 or 8 when she really started asking. I mean, she was just like, how are babies made? How are babies made? And so for the first couple of, well, I don't even know if it was, she was maybe 7, I think. For the first maybe year and a half, 2 years, I just gave her kind of a vague answer. But by the time she was 9, she just literally, she came to me and she said, Mom, I really want to know. I really want to understand how babies are made. And what I didn't want was, I didn't want to give her too much information where she was going to have to carry something heavy that her emotions and her brain weren't ready to handle.
Right.
And at the same time, I never want my girls to feel like sex is a bad thing or that it's, somehow shameful. I always wanted them to understand it in the context of God's plan for marriage. And so, she literally came eye to eye with me and she's like, Mom, I really want to know. And so I said, okay. I said, I'll tell you. And so, and I actually have a couple of books that I recommend that I will link to in the show notes that I think are really helpful. They are written from a very strong Christian perspective. But read them first before you read them to your kids.
Yes.
Anyway, I just sat down and I just explained it to her, and I was not embarrassed. She was not embarrassed. She was just like, oh, okay. And then because her sister is 5 years younger, somehow it just seemed a little bit more natural to talk with her about it. But let me tell you what has happened as a result of this. I now have a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old who are not afraid to talk to me about anything. They literally ask me questions about everything. And there have been many times where one of them will say, Mom, I'm kind of embarrassed to ask you this. I'm like, honey, there's nothing, first of all, there's nothing you can ask me that is going to surprise me.
Right.
Second of all, God created our bodies a certain way, and he created a husband and a wife. And within the confines of marriage, sex is a beautiful, wonderful gift that God has given us. And there is nothing to be ashamed of. It is a wonderful thing. But outside of marriage,
Right.
that's when it becomes shameful. And we talk about these things just, and the questions almost always come when we're in the car for some reason, usually alone, or going to the grocery store or whatever. And I'll have one kid with me. And so just be honest with your kids. Don't be embarrassed about it. Just explain, this is how God made our bodies. This is how babies are made. Again, I'll link to those books for you because they kind of go in different stages according to your child's age.
Are they The Story of Me?
Yes. Yeah.
The Story of
Yep.
Me.
Those are the ones.
Book 1, Before I Was Born. These are what we used to. These are amazing.
I think
awesome
there's
books.
4 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they give you the ages, which I'll be honest, depending on where your kids are at, it seems to me that homeschool kids, we can wait a little longer. They're not hearing things on the playground.
Right.
But you want to, our view is, well, here's my number 1 advice. Get a rabbit. Get 2 rabbits. Get a boy rabbit and a girl rabbit. And put them in a cage together. That's what happened with us. And then they have babies. And then one night my daughter said, is that how it works with you and Dad too? And we said, yep. And that was the end of it. It was hilarious. So if you're raised around animals, which our family was raised on ranches, that tells it all. And then you just explain how God made marriage. But I think, like Yvette said, we are to be their first line. We want our kids to know. I want to hit my kids before anyone else does. Yep. So some people say, oh, it's too early. But to me, you need to be aware of where your kids are, who they're hanging around with. And that's going to tell you when. Because the when is always before they hear it from someone else. Always. Yeah. Because you want to be the first one to tell them to make sure that they get truth and accurate information.
Right.
And the second thing is, I think, is if you wait too long, it might become awkward. Where when they're little, God has designed them. I mean, God made us a certain way, and it doesn't
Yeah.
become weird until sin enters into it.
Right.
So if we can hit it before that, and then our rule is, like you said, there is nothing you can't ask me. Nothing.
Right.
I don't care how awkward it feels. I don't care how, and this is what my husband always tells them. There's nothing I'm not going to answer. I will always tell you the truthful answer. And it has been awkward at many times, but the point is if they're old enough to ask, we want to tell them. Otherwise, they're going to start to try to figure it out in their own heads.
Right.
And their minds are too little. You know, we just don't want the world or the influences anywhere else for them to start to figure it out. So these books, The Story of Me, that just helps get you started and going there. But it's wonderful. It's a good thing. And we want to catch them before the world and the devil tries to twist what God has made for a beautiful, beautiful thing.
That's right. That's right.
So.
And it is a part of parenting that I love. And it's a part of homeschooling that I love, that we get to be the ones to teach this to our kids. They're not learning it from a classroom. I remember, years ago, we had a exchange student from China. She lived with us for an entire school year. And she was 14 when she came to us. And I remember she said, like, she didn't even understand how, like, the female body worked.
Wow.
She learned it at school. And she said, my mom never, like she said, in our culture, she said, moms don't talk to their kids about this stuff. And she was actually like, you talk to your girls about these types of things? And I was like, yes, of course I do. But it was such a shock to her that I, as their mother, and I'm thinking, well, I should be the one to talk to them about these things. Praise God that I have the opportunity to speak beauty and life into my children in regards to such a sensitive topic.
Right.
So yes, praise God for that. If they're asking questions, again, start kind of soft. Don't push them off to the side and say, that's none of your business. We're not going to answer that.
Right.
Be just cautious of your words. But at the same time, know when it's time, and you'll know. You listen to their cues. You'll know when it's time. So,
for sure. Good question.
Yes, that was a good question. All right, let me see. This next one is, this one we're going to answer pretty quickly. I'd love recommendations on a good homeschool curriculum for my preschooler, age 3. And Aby, I'm going to let you answer this, but before you answer it, I'm going to say we just recorded an episode all about preschool with Leslie Richards from the Homegrown Preschooler. And so she answers this question pretty well, but Aby, I'm going to let you jump on this really quickly.
I hope I don't answer it differently than her.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you, I know you won't, because I just interviewed her, and I know where you stand on this, because you stand where I stand.
Wonderful. Okay, so I think the word we have to get rid of in your question is that I love recommendations on a good homeschool curriculum for my preschooler. So what I'm not going to do is give you recommendations on a good homeschool curriculum for your preschooler, because your 3-year-old is 3, and we need to throw out curriculum, because your 3-year-old doesn't need curriculum. Your 3-year-old needs read to. As much as you can possibly read. Your 3-year-old needs talked to. Play with Play-Doh, play with games, take them on adventures, read to them. I'm going to say that 15 times. There is no evidence, and I'm an early childhood. I have my elementary ed degree, and I got an emphasis in early childhood development. And there is really no evidence that says that if you use a formal academic curriculum in those early years, and I'm even talking kindergarten, there's no evidence that your kids are going to academically be any more quote unquote successful than kids that didn't. But there is unbelievable amounts of evidence that will say that if you read to your child and interact with your child through verbal communication and play games with them, they will be far ahead of their peers. So I'm not going to go too much into it, because there's going to be a whole podcast on it, but I would say, would you just take your 3-year-old and snuggle that 3-year-old on your lap and just do life with them and not worry about the curriculum? That is my greatest advice.
Yep.
And my guess is the mom that asked this is your first kid at 3, because we all asked that with our first kid.
Yes.
And then we all realized, don't do that.
Right. Yes. I'm trying to remember exactly how he said it, but when Kurt Cameron was on for Homegrown Generation, and someone asked him a question about curriculum, and he said something to the effect of, the parent is the best curriculum
I love
for your child.
Yes.
And it's true. We are their curriculum, and Leslie really does answer it the same way that you do. I mean, she's literally written a book about preschoolers, and she says it's through play, it's through exploration, it's through, interacting with your kids. That's how they learn. Do not sit your 3-year-old down at a table and expect him to copy letters and do worksheets. And
here's the thing, if you do, not only can they not, but you are going to rob that child of the love of learning. You're going to kill their love of learning before they're ever even actually school age.
Right.
And I've seen it happen time and time again. You get a first grader who hates school, and that's because they've been sat down for the last 3 years trying to do school when they never should have. So just right now, just instill in them a love for learning. Don't kill that with worksheets and curriculum.
Right. And I used to be a preschool teacher, and let me just tell you, we didn't have a set curriculum. We literally, we read to the kids several times a day. We had, our reading hour. They played dress up. They played with toys. They played outside. They just explored. They played, like you said, with Play-Doh. I mean, those were the things that they did. We did not make them sit down, and we would, we had flashcards, and we would sit and say, A says A, B says B.
But really,
we
not
would do
even
those
at
things.
3 necessarily. That's more like 4 or 5.
Yeah, you're right. That was like 4 or 5.
3, they're not even able to put that stuff together.
Yep, even 4 and 5, it's not necessary yet. No, if they're expressing an interest in wanting to learn how to read or wanting to learn their letters and things like that, or colors,
point them out to them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But
my husband always says I have my master's in coloring and Play-Doh.
Right. I love it. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're out of time for part 2. Yay. We are going to be back again with part 3 to answer the last couple of questions that we have. Thank you guys again for joining us. We love you, and we will see you back here, I think, tomorrow. Woo-hoo. Okay. See you then. Bye.